very special to me, Illeana Cocotos. She is from In Crisis Consulting. Essentially, what I wanted to chat today about is about last week sometime, I received a message from her. And the message was kind of like, "Hi, Jen, how you been doing? I hope everything's been going well. And I know you've been doing certain things. I wanted to know, do you have anything that you've done that can help my clients?" And what was super remarkable in that moment was that when I first met Illeana, I was completely powerless. Like, I basically sat on her chair and I had no idea. I couldn't even speak. And I know that might sound a bit dramatic, but I couldn't. And the one thing that fed my soul so much, and the one thing that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was speak and help people. And I couldn't even do that. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a story, and I asked Illeana, can we sit and can we chat, and can she give us a little bit of insight on how her clients have been feeling and how she's been feeling, and basically how people are going from feeling powerless to hopefully limitless. So how are you, Illeana? How are you doing today?
Good. I'm glad to be here. It really, really is a blessing to be here. And it's been such a privilege to be part of your journey. It really,
Thank you.
people do share, their most intimate, pain, their traumas that they've gone through. So I really am blessed to be able to walk that journey. So, we were able to work together. I think we made a great team. We make a great team. And I know it's not easy. It takes a lot of courage, to be able to confront your pain, to be able to, deal with your trauma. So I just want to say to you, Jennifer, I mean, it gives me such joy, and it really, really does. Just see how I've seen that shift, and that to
Yeah.
me gives me a lot of, it really does, give a lot of value to what I do as well. To see somebody when they start off their journey, like as you said, there were times that, you came and you didn't look well. I mean, you look amazing today. There were
Thank
times,
you.
I remember the tears. I remember, how you looked physically. I remember there were days that you couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
I remember, there were voice notes that you often left me. And I mean, even just your tone of voice, kind of your affect was so flat. So,
Yeah.
to go from that, from a feeling of being totally powerless, helpless, and we're gonna talk about those two concepts, because I think that's important, to what you're doing now. And when I contacted you, even the way it just came together was quite unbelievable for me, because I
Yeah.
contacted you because obviously you've started your new business, and it was also from a legal perspective to kind of maybe help clients that are going through difficult legal issues at the moment, with the lockdown. And then just from there, it kind of opened up, in terms of your, you being able to then share your own experience, which I think is very valuable for people that are listening, because
Yeah.
people resonate, when you've gone through something, when you've experienced it, and then they can see, how you've grown, how it hasn't limited you. I think that's going to help a lot of people,
Yeah,
so
and I
you.
think, it does help, because admit, when I was sitting with you, I never, like, I knew I would get better and I knew it would be fine again, but it's so hard to envision that when you're sitting in that space. And
It's very hard.
I was stubborn. I never ever thought that I would need someone that would be there for me. I thought I could do it myself, and I couldn't. I needed you to
Absolutely.
take my hand.
And it's hard. It's hard to admit. We're very critical of ourselves. And that's going to be part of this conversation as well. Is we're often very, very critical, and we've got to
Yeah.
start being kind to ourselves. Sometimes, it's so big that we can't do it on our own. And I know it's very hard to sit, on this side. I'm sitting. I don't know
Mm.
if you've noticed, on my own couch.
Yeah.
So
I saw. It's
I know
amazing.
it's a
Mm.
very difficult space, and
Mm.
I've also been, on the receiving end, so I know what it feels like. It's not easy. So I just
Mm.
want to say to you, Jennifer, I mean, you were brave, you were
Mm.
courageous. Therapy can evoke a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
but if you go through it, if you process what you've been through, the growth that you can experience is tremendous, and it's worth it. It's a hard
Mm.
journey though. So the
Yeah,
fact
it
that
is, but worth it at the end.
absolutely, and you testimony to that, in terms of where you're at now. And I think you can help a lot of people. So through the trauma, in the past, in psychology, we often have focused on post-traumatic stress disorder, which often occurs as a result of trauma if we haven't processed it or if we're struggling with it. But there's a newer term called post-traumatic growth, okay, which if you work through, it doesn't mean that you're going to experience that straight away. But once you've experienced your trauma, if you're able to process it, you can actually grow, you can flourish. And then you're limitless, because you'll reach your full potential. Otherwise, what happens is the trauma constricts us and restricts us. And we can't get out of bed, and we can't work, and we can't function.
And trauma is a real thing. Like, I didn't realize that trauma was actually, and for me, I'm very open about my journey. Like, I even remember saying to you, Illeana, I don't know what to do. I can't control my mind. I think I need to take pills. And I did start taking something. And then about a month ago, I got off them. Like, I weaned myself off. I don't take anything anymore. But I knew that in that moment, I had to, just to be okay. Like, in that moment, I just needed something just to even get out of bed. And I didn't believe that trauma actually, when you say it gets stuck in your system, I didn't believe that until it actually did.
until you
I could
experience.
not control my mind at all. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to experience.
It's very, very tough. And you see, you've been through it now, so you can understand other people. So the fact that you're more compassionate, we've decided to obviously do this conversation today, which I think is important.
Yeah.
You're helping others through your pain. So as you say, it's a very physiological process. Your remember, it's not just your mind that goes through the trauma, it's your body as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes, yes, we need the medication, because physiologically we are affected. And trauma, we often, trauma is a tsunami, a trauma is a hurricane, or a trauma, there can be very big traumas, okay, but there can be a lot of childhood issues that we've gone through, which are traumatic. There can be relationship issues, there are lots of things which constitute trauma. So we're obviously going to chat, more about that. But it's important, as you say, to identify that physiologically it affects your system, so it really is, it's phenomenal to see your shift and to see where you're at, so maybe we should, in terms of your feelings of powerlessness, I mean, can you describe what you felt like initially?
So initially, I think it was like I always lived a life where I was always working. I was constantly on the ball. I was constantly helping other people. So I had to be, like I always used to say, I was never the helpless. I was always the helper. And I always was there for people. And I genuinely also do believe that I maybe in an empathy way took on people's traumas, like because I would go on their journey with them. And then when I got robbed, and that's when I came to you, although the robbery wasn't actually as bad as it could have been, it triggered something within me. So I would wake up from that. And also it was little things. It was little things going on in my life, not being happy in my job, wanting to move, not being in control. And that robbery, which was big but actually quite small, just ignited everything that I should have been feeling before and dealing with. And I was powerless. I sat in bed and I couldn't. So I left my job, and I actually say that time of my life was the happiest and the saddest time of my life. It's like I was so happy because I was taking steps to do things that I wanted to do, but I was so upset because the steps that I took, I couldn't actually do what I wanted to do. I couldn't sit down and work. I couldn't help people. I just sat, and I felt so powerless in the sense that my power is speaking and helping people and being there and empowering and educating. And I couldn't even get out of bed to brush my teeth. Like, and that for me, I've never felt. And also you feel shame. You feel like, do you remember when we used to talk? I used to say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to write a list of what I need to do. And you'd be like, be gentle. You don't have to
You're
rush.
very, very hard on yourself.
Yeah, I was. And the day that I let go of it and said, this is the space that I'm in right now, like every day I just need to take it as it comes, I finally got there. And it was time, it was healing, it was speaking, it was also realizing that if I'm a shell of a human being and I'm powerless, how am I supposed to give someone else power? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's about being gentle with yourself and realizing that sometimes actually embracing powerlessness can be powerful, if that makes sense.
100%, 100%. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you've described it in essence. Okay, so
Mm,
powerlessness, exactly as you described it. Okay, so we don't have power over something. Okay, so for
mm,
you in that moment, it was your trauma. Okay, you had
mm.
no control over what happened. What we as human beings do, we feel we're not in control of certain things that happen to us. Okay, so even if
Yeah.
we take, this COVID-19, the lockdown, it's rendered many, many people powerless, because the truth is we have no control over it. We
Yeah.
don't know how long it's there for. We don't know what the impact is. We're really very much in the dark. So as human beings, remember, we want to be in control. So we push
Mm,
away, exactly described it, we push away those feelings of powerlessness because it creates anxiety, but
mm.
it doesn't actually help. Okay, as you said, the key was when you embraced it. Okay, so
Yeah.
powerlessness, okay, is when we have no control over something. Helplessness is something a little bit different. Okay, so helplessness is when we cannot act. We almost kind of stuck. There's no one there to help us to act.
Yeah.
So the powerlessness we have to embrace. We have to get to a point where we accept we're actually not in control of hijackings or external traumas or COVID-19. We're not in control of that. But are we helpless? Okay,
Mm.
we're not actually helpless. This is the key to it, is that we have to realize that we can control how we react to it. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you look at you know, prominent, people in the past, like Viktor Frankl. Okay, he was a
Mm,
Holocaust survivor, and he made a very big contribution to the field of psychology. And what he in essence said was, obviously being a Holocaust survivor, everything can be taken away from you. Everything. Okay, we have
mm.
no control over the outside, but what we do have control over is our freedom to choose our attitude in that moment, in that
Completely.
experience. Okay, and that's what it's all about. It's how
Mm,
we choose to respond to those external things, that cause us trauma.
mm.
So I think, as you described it, that's exactly what it's all about. Okay, and
Yeah,
I
and it
think
is choosing, but it's also having the tools to choose, because in that moment, I thought by me accelerating and pushing myself I'm like, okay, what made me feel better in the past? Exercising. Then I would set all these intentions to exercise, but when I couldn't even get up and do it, I would feel like a failure. I'd feel like I in shame. So
mm,
it's like when you're like now, the way that you're feeling is not how you felt. Whatever's going to help you now is not something that helped you when you weren't traumatized or when you weren't powerless. So you kind of have to develop new tools. And you have to, like, I remember coming to your rooms, I'd be like, okay, I feel fine today, I don't want to come. And then I'd force myself, and then afterwards I would feel better. And
mm,
it's not that I would walk out being like, oh, I'm on top of the world or whatever. It's that I committed myself to doing something, to know that I need to heal from it. And if I don't do it properly now, it's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. And I'm not even saying now. Now, yes, I feel limitless. And yes, I get up and I work every day. But some days I wake up and I'm like, oh my word, I just want to sleep. I'm feeling very frustrated. Like, it's not just smooth sailing, but I now know what helps me and what doesn't. Before, Jennifer would get up, go for a run, push yourself to do all of that, and then be stuck. Now I'm
mm.
like, okay, you need to rest today and watch Netflix and do nothing. So whatever works for me now, I listen to myself. I have to.
Absolutely. You have to
Mm,
listen to yourself, and you've got to be kind to yourself. Okay.
mm,
Because often we have this really hard voice inside of our head, and that's part of the healing process. Okay.
mm,
So as you described, okay, what the trauma does is it limits you. And we
mm,
often beat ourselves over the head and we think, why can't we do it? And when someone's depressed, snap out of it. Not so
mm,
easy.
mm,
Okay. So
mm,
need to just explain a little bit about what trauma actually is, so that
Yeah.
people can understand that, sometimes it's so overwhelming that we need help.
Yeah.
Okay, and as you reached out and you got that help, and you were able to move forward. Otherwise, you would have remained completely stuck. Okay, because you
Completely.
were not able on your own to do it, and that's
Mm,
not a reflection of a weakness at all. It's a
mm,
reflection that perhaps that trauma, as you described it, was kind of the catalyst, but there were so many other traumas perhaps in your life that you
mm.
never ever dealt with, and then
Yeah.
what happens is, it's kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back, and then everything comes out. So
Yeah.
if we look at trauma, okay, I think it's quite important just to define what trauma is. And there is a doctor by the name of Dr. Gabor Mate, and he was a physician. He's kind of moved more towards the field of trauma because of the fact that he worked with a lot of families, and he was looking and he was seeing, a lot of different patterns with his clients. He was noticing, which family members, developed illnesses. He was noticing
Mm.
which family members developed addictions, mental health issues, and he was fascinated by this. And he explored, and he found that everything is linked to trauma. So
Yeah.
if trauma is unprocessed, it can lead to addictions, it can lead to mental health issues, it can lead to,
Mm.
physical diseases. So he was quite fascinated. So the way in which he describes trauma, okay, is quite useful, I think. So trauma comes from the Greek word wounding. Okay, so if you think
Mm.
of cutting your skin, okay, what
Yeah.
happens when you cut your skin? Okay, you have a wound
Mm.
there. And
Yeah.
as part of the healing process, scar tissue will develop. Okay,
Yeah.
now what happens if there's a really big wounding? Okay, if there's a really big wounding, you'll probably get a very big scar. You'll
Mm.
probably, the nerves might be severed. Okay, now if we think of like a scab on your skin compared to the rest of your skin, how is
Mm.
it different? How do you think it differs from
Well, it's so
your?
sensitive. The minute you touch it, it can just start bleeding again and break up, like break.
So it's
Mm.
sensitive, okay, break. As the scab develops, it becomes hardened, okay, and
Mm.
it might not be as flexible. So scab, on your, if we imagine on your hand,
Mm.
you can't move it, it becomes rigid.
Mm.
The feeling becomes less around that area. Now that is exactly what happens with trauma. When
Mm.
something traumatic happens to us, we become more rigid, we become more constricted, we become
Mm.
less flexible, we live a life of pain and fear. We live in fear and pain, and we
Mm.
don't live the life that we actually should live. Okay,
Yeah.
so trauma is not what happens on the outside. It's our reaction to it, and we don't need to live like that. Often we carry our
Mm.
pain, fear, like you say. We've carried it for many, many, many years. We're not intended to live like that. We
Yeah.
intend to be open, to be connected to our environment, to be able to work to our full potential. So many people carry this fear and this pain, and as you say, it's so wonderful to know that you can let go of that and you can get the help
Yeah.
you
It's
need.
not easy. It's not easy,
Not at
but
all.
it's when it's worth it. Like it's one of those things where do you want to be protecting your scab? Because like let's be honest, whenever you have a wound that's on your skin and someone comes near you, you're always kind of like, no, no, be careful. You're gonna hurt my pain. So if you're spending your whole life trying to navigate through a life where you avoid pain and you avoid trauma and you're also actually avoiding happiness when you're trying to avoid pain.
100%. You're actually living in fear and in trauma. You're not
Yeah.
living, you're not living your full potential. 100%. So
Yeah.
it does limit you. And I wish people would understand that, because it almost imprisons you. And yes, it's very, very hard work. I'm not saying it's an easy process.
Mm.
But when you're confronted, what you said was, when you confronted that powerlessness,
Mm.
that was the key. We've got to embrace it. And
Yeah.
it's not an easy process. And even with children, children, the beauty of working with children is, if you can deal with their childhood trauma, They will not carry it to adulthood. So we see adults that are broken, that are disconnected, that can't function properly, that
Yeah.
become addicts, that develop mental illnesses. It's because of underlying trauma.
And it's a cycle that goes on to their children. Like I've even said, one of my passions is protecting children in divorce because of that exact reason. I know, like, even the men that I've dated up until now and the people that I've experienced are damaged from their childhood. And if I can at least tell parents that you need to protect your child, because it's not only giving them an uncomfortable childhood, it's actually potentially ruining their adulthood. And like, remember when I said to you that one day where it's like, whenever a parent is horrible to a child or a parent does something to a child, the child doesn't stop loving the parent, the child stops loving themselves. And it gets into such a space where we're all damaged, we're all a little bit damaged. Like, whether I get on a stage and I help millions of people, we all have something, but it's about saying, yes, I'm damaged, I'm not broken, I'm working on fixing certain things that don't serve me. I'm working on fixing certain people that, like, not fixing the people, but removing them from my life if I don't have the control over fixing them and they actually hurt me. And I think a lot of people, they are so scared to deal with their stuff, but they don't realize, would you rather, and I always say this to my clients, the way that you're feeling now and the way that you're living now, do you want to be living like this in 5 years? Because if the answer is no, you have to take action now. You can't wait until
100%.
tomorrow. It just gets worse. It just builds up and up. And yes, it's not easy. And yes, it's not a one-time fix, but at least try it. And at least open yourself up to healing, because when you're raising kids or raising a family or in your business, do you want to be feeling like you're not enough every day? Like, no one deserves that.
No, 100%. And as you so
Mm,
correctly said, it starts in childhood. So that
mm,
little child, that is a trauma for that child.
mm,
Children are egocentric. They don't understand, if the mommy is kind of absent,
mm,
it's a reflection of the mommy. They take it upon themselves. So there we
yeah.
have the first trauma. And they will start to feel that they're not enough. Now, what they do, it's almost like they put on a little set of glasses of I'm not good enough, and then they walk through life and other experiences happen, and they will see it through that same set, and they become adults who
Mm.
perceive the environment in exactly the same way because of this
The
underlying,
lens.
so absolutely. And then unfortunately they become those adults, and as you say, we pass it down to our children, because we're not consciously aware of these things. It affects who we choose as a partner. As you correctly said, the good and the bad news is that we're all damaged. No matter
Mm,
how well trained you are, no matter what insight you've got, we're all damaged. Okay, but
yeah.
it's the extent of which we are damaged. And as you say, that willingness, look, it's petrifying. It's petrifying to confront, your woundings, your
Yeah.
trauma. I see a lot of children, and the parents think they're going to drop them off, and they're going to do some play
Mm,
therapy, and it's lovely and
mm,
and nice. Half the time, those children can cry for a long period of time
mm,
because they're confronting the anxiety. But once they leave the anxiety, they work through the anxiety because they've now had to confront it. The anxiety,
yeah.
as you so correctly said, then goes down. We deal with our issues. And the sad thing for me is that many people die with their traumas, with the
Mm,
trauma they've lived with their whole lives. And I,
yeah.
I also do believe, living in South Africa, the crime that we see, the violence that we see, I do believe that it's not necessarily about poverty. It's
Mm,
actually about trauma. We have a
yeah.
lot of underlying trauma as a country which we've never resolved. And what happens
Yeah.
is trauma is unfortunately passed down. So until we address that, I don't think we're going to, stop the level of violence that we see, unfortunately.
I think the most important thing, and this is what I realized even with you, is that, like, even when I would go through, like, when I was seeing you and I'd go through anything, and yes, it's good for a certain amount of time. Um, I would rely on you to help me through it and all of that. And I think being having someone that is there for you constantly when you are going through things and you can reach out is so important. But I think what makes you different from any other psychologist that I've seen is that you also give tools. So I never want to be in a position that when I'm dealing with my trauma, I have to make sure that you are available to see me all the time, else I'm not going to be able to cope myself. I think it's good to reach out, and it's good to speak, and it's good to deal with your stuff. But I never ever want to be reliant. Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess COVID's been hard or whatever, and some days I wake up, but what I started to realize is that I would wake up and I wouldn't go, okay, I need to see Illeana, but I also wouldn't know that I was burying stuff. So I got those tools that when I'm not dealing, I use healing like things in other ways. Do you know what I mean? And I think for people to have crutches is very important, and for people to have strong people around them is so important. But you never want to be in a position that you are stuck in therapy your whole life, because everything then becomes a trauma. Whether you have a bad day, it's a trauma. Whether you've stubbed your toe, it's a trauma. And life shouldn't be like that.
Look, the whole, the purpose of therapy should not be to create a dependency. The purpose is for you to become resilient. And I saw you just before lockdown, and I haven't seen you. We haven't had any sessions during lockdown. And what's been very interesting, even with other clients, the proof is in the pudding. That they are now like put clients that I've had from before, put in this situation, and they're coping because of the work that they've done, which is to me, like I say, it really is it's a privilege to be able to work with people and to share such hard aspects, of their lives, and such intimate, moments and experiences and traumas that it really, really is a privilege. And as I say, we work as a team. It's not me. I'm not waving a magical wand and making things right. We work together because that is the whole point, as you said, to have the tools. When you are then thrust in a situation, can you cope with it? Because that is the true, test of therapy, not to sit in therapy for 100 years, but
Of course not.
It's to develop, the coping mechanisms. And as you say, this lockdown has obviously shown how resilient you are. The fact that you are working, that you've got yourself, through this difficult time, you're working, you're focusing on business, so under abnormal situation, stressful situation, you're coping, you're thriving. That is exactly what we're saying. It's not the outside, it's how we react to it. That determines whether it's going to be traumatic or not. So it's amazing to hear that, and it does give me a lot of joy to see that, that as you say,
and it's
dependency here. It's about you having then the skills, but also what I think is very important is, and we can touch on it maybe very, very briefly, is kind of the technique that I used, to deal with is very trauma specific. And what it does is it incorporates the body, which I think is very important for trauma. So it's not just about talking, because remember, we can talk until, the cows come home, and we can, it doesn't necessarily always bring about change, especially with trauma. If we understand kind of the physiology of it, we sometimes need a technique that kind of helps the body to release. So just very briefly, and I'll then maybe chat a little bit about kind of the physiology around it, the technique that we used. Okay, so the technique that we used was the EMDR, okay, which is kind of been developed specifically for trauma. How did you find that compared to other therapies that you had gone through?
I found that, so for me, talking about something only goes so far, right? So I think that's why also, like, even when I was having really bad days during lockdown and anxiety and stress, I do actually think that, like, because I found that it worked for me. And so let's give an example. So when I was sitting with you, firstly explaining about the robbery and all of that, and then we would dig deeper. In the beginning, I couldn't even explain it. I couldn't even speak to you about it. I couldn't even engage. And now, if I ever think about the robbery or anything that actually started that and ignited that trauma within me, it's like it flows off my tongue so easily. Because whenever we would do certain things and we would process them, I genuinely felt like I had not gotten over them, because obviously there's always a little trigger forever, but with our sessions, when we would do that work, I think it accelerated me, my healing, like tenfold, definitely. Like I could feel a proper, because going somewhere and speaking is that I find that I would sit on your like chair, and I would say, okay, this is how I feel and this is how I feel. And when you only have an hour of therapy, generally as the patient, you're the one that's doing all the talking, but you're not actually allowing your therapist to give you feedback and allow you to be there. You might as well actually speak to yourself. But when you have that technique and you're holding it, and the questions that you get asked before, so it would be like, Jen, how did that situation make you feel from 0 to 10? Up to 9, fear. After a few sessions, that exact same situation, that exact same space would make me fear, that would make me feel empowered by 9. So it was like that flip of emotion. I went from fear to empowered, from scared to grateful. So that's what I found was remarkable.
Okay, so that's exactly what the technique is. Okay, so we're not going to get into detail, but it stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Okay, so as you described it, we go back to the trauma, we process it. Okay, because when a trauma happens, whatever we thought at the time, and it's normally very maladaptive, it's a negative belief. It was my fault, I'm not good enough, I'm useless, and the list goes on. There's something we felt anxious, or we felt scared. There's something perhaps that we heard, or we saw, we smelt. What happens is it gets locked in the nervous system, and every time you think about it, it triggers off that anxiety, because it's sitting in your nervous system. Okay, so what we do is we go back to it. Okay, and through this technique we help you to process it, we neutralize it. So when you see it, eventually it didn't trigger, it wasn't disturbing for you anymore. Then you were able to look at it from a different perspective. You were able to say, okay, instead of feeling powerless now, when I think of that experience, I can now, look at it and say, you know what, I survived. I've, whatever the positive is, because remember what we said, trauma is about how you perceive the event. So if you're going to perceive an event as I'm useless, I'm worthless, not, of course it's going to cause you trauma. But if you're able to look at the same thing, okay, remember, and often we can't do it on our own. And I'm going to explain to you, after getting help, we can grow. And that very same trauma is now kind of a source of growth and resilience for us. Okay, so if we just look at kind of the physiology of trauma, okay, so when we are confronted with a traumatic situation, okay, so say for example, what you went through, it's something that is threatening to us. Okay, it's something where we just don't feel safe. And our body is amazing. Okay, so our body tries to help us. It says, look, Jennifer, you're in trouble now. Okay, so our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. So this activates our fight or flight response. Okay, and I'm sure most people have heard about fight or flight. So our fight response is where we kind of run away from the danger. Okay, this is where we feel anxious, we feel fear. That's in that moment, that's what we experience. So we're trying to get away from the danger. So if we think of a little buck who's running away from a lion, their flight mechanism is, and they run away. So nature helps us, and our bodies help us to get away from the danger. The fight response, conversely, if that is activated, this is often, if you think of people that are, say, perhaps in a hijacking, and then they'll take on the hijacker, they confront the danger, rage, we experience rage, aggression, but it's our body's way of trying to basically, protect us and help us. Okay, so at this moment, we still feel like we can do something. We still feel like either we can take this danger on, or we can run away. Now, I know in your experience, okay,
I just froze. I was like, what's going on?
Okay, so that's the next response. Okay, so there's fight or there's freeze. Okay, but when you were running away, from the intruders, when you were running, because your flight was at. So
Mm.
your body is incredible. Your body, releases adrenaline. Your heart, pumps, and your breathing kind of, it's quite sharp to get you away from this. Okay, so
Mm.
physiologically, it's not just a mind thing. Can you see the body goes through that trauma? Okay,
Yeah.
everything is kind of affected physiologically. Now, you spoke about the freeze response. Okay, so
Mm.
if the trauma is too overwhelming, like if it's a major big trauma, or there are cumulative traumas, like
Mm.
this is kind of the last trauma on top of many traumas, or it's a continuous trauma. Okay, so if we think of children that are sexually abused, and they live in,
Mm.
like, they don't have anywhere to go. They can't run away. They
Yeah.
can't take on. So that freeze mechanism is activated. Okay, if we think of COVID-19, it's a continuous trauma that's it's kind of going on now for many people, because we
Yeah.
don't know. It's not like it's ended. So if it becomes too much and we can't deal with it, okay, we then go into freeze mode. Okay, so
Yeah.
freeze is, if we kind of use an example in nature, okay, like a possum. Okay, a possum, when a predator comes along, they'll freeze. That's their coping
Yeah.
mechanism. It's to kind of pretend that they're dead, so the predator will go
Mhm.
away. Now, likewise, in human beings, when we freeze, it's just that we're completely overwhelmed. Okay, but this is
Mm.
quite a dangerous space to be in. Okay, because
Mm.
this is where our body is kind of in an emergency state.
Like shut
Okay,
down.
the body starts to shut down. Okay, so often
Mm.
in this state, this is where depression comes in. Okay, so people that often come in with depression, if you trace back, there's underlying trauma there. Okay, but they've reached a point where they're completely overwhelmed. Here they feel helpless. They feel
Mm.
there's nothing I can do. Previously, when you're in fight or flight, I can still do something. I can confront it,
Mm.
or I can run away. When we're in freeze, it's like this feeling of there's nothing I can do. I'm
That's where I
hopeless.
was, completely
I'm
frozen.
depressed.
Completely.
Okay. My
Mm.
body's shutting down. I can't function. And this is, like you said, sometimes we need medication because we
Mm.
need something to lift us. Okay. We often, people in this stage are suicidal. They don't want to
Mm.
live. Everything just starts to shut down. And
Mm.
it's a very dangerous space to be in. Your immune system goes down. Everything
Mm.
physiologic, gets slowed down. Often people that are very depressed, you'll notice, like you said, you can't get out of bed.
Mm.
Socially, you don't want to interact, you don't want to engage, because it's just, remember, you've got very little energy. So your body, it's trying to help you. It conserves that energy. In this stage, we dissociate.
Mm.
Dissociation is when something is too big, and it kind of, our brain, tries to numb us out, tries to take us out of the trauma, because
Mm.
it's just too much. Okay, so children that are sexually abused, from a young age, often develop, it's a coping mechanism, because I'm stuck in the trauma, can't get away,
Mm.
there's nothing. But long term, this is not, it's not healthy. Okay, so
Yeah.
this, reflects, obviously, that it's often our body releases these stress hormones, and if we don't get them out, if we don't process them, they kind of get stuck in our nervous system, and that's when we experience anxiety, we experience depression, and it's
Mm.
not a reflection that we are weak or we can't deal with it on our own. um, Sometimes we need help because it's too much, or as you spoke about, there's underlying trauma here. So the way in
Yeah.
which you're acting to the current trauma might be indicative of what you've been through in your whole life, and
Yeah.
you've never it, so we have to be kind. We often, we're the most harsh critical judge to our own selves, and that also is because of often childhood trauma, where
Mm.
someone in our life, made us feel like that, and we've taken it on, but we're harming ourselves, rather than being kind and nurturing, which will actually break that cycle. So we've got to be aware of these things, and not be hard on ourselves, and get the help should we need it.
No, cool. But I think sometimes it's like you need to be told how you're feeling, and you need to, like, it's so overwhelming and it's so bizarre because you don't know what you're feeling. So you need to be told this is what you're feeling. You need to be kind of like with yourself. And for me, I know that therapy is something that people can't just go to. And I was obviously fortunate enough that you would say to me, Jen, fill in this form and Discovery can help you with your sessions and all of that. And I said to myself that even if I felt fine on any given day, I committed myself to those 15 sessions and I made sure that I was there. And I think though that kind of work did help me for a predicament like this, because starting a new business, I've left my secure job and now COVID hit. If I hadn't done all that work, I promise you, I don't think I would actually be as fine as I have been because I
Abs-
did the work in the hardest time.
mm. Absolutely. Okay, so
Mm,
this abnormal situation has actually shown, okay, like I've said, the proof is in the pudding.
mm,
Okay. The test of therapy,
mm.
has it worked?
Yeah.
Because obviously if it didn't work, you wouldn't be where you're at. And I think your experience can give a lot of people hope. And this is what
Mm,
this conversation is about today, to
yeah.
show people that they don't have to sit with their pain, they don't have to feel powerless. We have a
Mm,
choice over how we respond to this. Yes, we're not in control of COVID or whatever, the external situation is, but we can have a choice over how we react and we can get help. Okay. And as you said, you know what? I know you were privileged enough to get that help, but the help
mm,
is there, and
yeah.
it, the EMDR is kind of a fairly newer technique in South Africa. Okay, but it's available, and
Mm,
people can have access to it, and it does bring about a huge shift. And what the beautiful thing about it is it incorporates the body. Okay, so
yeah.
it allows the body to release the stress, the trauma, and once we do that, you know, you can live your full potential, which is exactly how we intended to live. So I
Yeah.
think your story will give people a lot of hope, because you've been through it. You know what it feels like to not be able to get out of bed, and to look at to where you've actually come to at this point during this lockdown, which as you said is a
Mm,
very stressful event, that people can realize that it is possible, that we can get help. There's a lot of therapists doing online sessions. They're available, so if people need the help, it's just about reaching out. And as I said, it's not about waving a magic wand. It's about working together,
yeah.
and realizing that you have the ability to do it as well. It's not about creating any kind of dependency.
No, of course. And I think so, like in closing it off, if you could give people that are listening to this like three tips that they could do on a daily basis that could kind of get there from being powerless to limitless, like even if it's something small, just like three little tips that when they wake up and they're feeling that like sense of aloneness and powerlessness, what are the small things that they can do? Because I do believe that those small little things will get them into your office or into a therapist's office. It's just about that strength. I had someone in my life at that moment that
So
forced
what?
me to go to therapy. I wouldn't have gone if I wasn't forced. But
Mm.
like people need to know like small three little things that they can do on a daily basis to get them kind of in that seat.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is accept that we are powerless. Okay,
Mm,
we've actually got to accept it rather than pushing it away and trying to control. We actually have to accept we are not in control of many, many things. That is
mm,
the only truth, actually, that we know. We're not in control of the lockdown, COVID, job loss. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things going on. We are not in control of that. So the
mm,
first thing would be to stop pushing it away, to almost on some level embrace it. Okay.
yeah.
The second thing would be to realize and to reframe that we're actually not helpless, that
Mm,
the only thing we really, really have control over is our reaction. Okay,
mm,
so part of that would be, I think, switching off that critical judge in your head, that tells you you're not good enough, or
mm,
you should try hard, or you must just snap out of it. Try be
mm,
kind to yourself. Try be nurturing. reframe it, look at things. If you have the ability to look at things in a different perspective, that's definitely going to make a difference. And at this, when you're feeling helpless, what often helps as well is bring in your belief system, your spirituality, whatever it is for each person, because that helps you to not feel so alone. Okay, so that is quite useful.
Yeah.
Then I would say, look after your body. Don't neglect your body. We're not a separate mind and a separate body. We are connected. So feed yourself. Look after yourself. Try and get rest. Because if we neglect our body, we're not going to be able to function. So you've said 3 things, but the 4th thing I'm going to say
That's
is
a
get
bonus
help.
one. Yeah.
Get help. If you're struggling, once again, don't put on, the critical, judgmental voice. Switch that off. Get help. Reach out. People, hopefully, that have seen this, if they need anything, are very welcome to contact me. I can always put you in touch. There's many therapists in South Africa that we can, put you in touch with. You don't need to sit with this. You don't need to sit with your pain and your fear. Deal with it, let go of it. And I promise you, just as you've experienced, it really is the most liberating thing to let go of that trauma and to realize that I don't have to live a constricted, limitless life. Gut pain and fear and anxiety and depression. That's not a way to live. We were not intended to live like that. Okay, so that's what I would basically suggest.
Yeah, and I think, thank you so much. I think this chat for me, like it's also nice because when you start to feel amazing again, you also kind of, you don't ever forget about the pain that you went through, but it's also nice to kind of not reconnect with it in a bad way, but reconnect in a proud way. To be like, the last time I saw you, I was sitting on that chair where you were sitting. And yes, I'm not saying that I will never come back, because I know I will. I know I have to. It's about the work that you put in constantly, and not, I never ever want to have to run back to you when I'm in crisis. That's something that I've learned my lessons in the past for that. That's not the kind of person I want to be again. And yeah, and thank you so much for joining me with, like, on this video and this journey. I really appreciate it more than you'll ever know.
Thank you, Jennifer. I mean, as I said, the joy I get is just seeing you, seeing where you came from, and kind of realizing how far you've come. That really, and it's a privilege, like I've said many times, today. It really is a blessing, and a privilege to be able to do this kind of work, and to work in partnership, with clients, and to see their growth. And as you say, it's a lifelong journey. We're never going to stop. Even, it doesn't matter how well trained you are, what insight you've got, you're never going to reach a point where and we don't want to be perfect,
No, of course
but
not.
it's about, as you say, constantly, if you need the help, get the help, and constantly growing and embracing that growth, not being so scared that we kind of, coil away from it and we fight, but to actually embrace it and to see it as growth, and that growth is, across our whole lifetime. So thank you. It's really been a blessing to be here. And I hope, your story will help other people, because I think people connect, they resonate with personal experiences and stories, and it gives them hope. If they can leave just today knowing that there's hope. I don't have to sit in darkness, because that depression, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It is a terrible place to live. And even anxiety, whatever it is that you're living with, you can deal with it. You can be free of it. So thank you for sharing your having the courage. I think it takes a lot of courage also to share something so personal, but I think it's going to help a lot of people, so
and thank you to everyone that has listened. We really appreciate your time. And if you want to reach out, I'll put our details on the video. And yeah, Illeana, I hope you have the most beautiful week, and I'll chat to you soon.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks a million. Take care. Ciao.